for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome. In today's video, as you can see, I'm sitting outside in nature once again after quite a long time. Where I was before, winters can be quite harsh, pretty radical and extreme in most times, most cases, and I'm in a new environment now, and I'm still being acclimated to this whole scenery, and I'm still blessed because I'm surrounded with nothing else but hills and forests. So there's a lot of nature paths, and for now in this transitional space, I'm excited for things to be as they are, and in a way I'm still continuing the journey of Christ's breakthrough through all that has been transgressed against the very essence of life. And my life, as you know, that I've shared with you, has not been easy in the past few years, especially in the last year. But we continue to push through. So in today's matter, in this topic, I want to talk about is, what is Christ really? What is the truth, the essence of Christ? As you know, those of you who perhaps don't, because you might be new and just stumbling across my sharings, my path is that of Christ embodiment and light body ascension, resurrection. So it's a mystical path in which the inner technology, which is the inner divine intelligence and truth of illumined body, to break through what we know as physical density and physical matter, and through almost like this quantum essence level, through what, in my own work called the galactic pulsar of light, using that from within and applying these sacred divine laws of higher orchestrations of light, we're actually transcending, transforming, transmutating, and transfiguring the physical body. And because this has been so deeply transgressed on so many levels through many, forces that be, forces of darkness, forces of control, forces of oppression, archonic forces, and antichrist construct and artificial intelligence, it's difficult for us to actually create an establishment of this through our own bodies, because our bodies are continuously being suppressed. And as you know, I've talked about that a lot. However, today I want to start with the ideology itself. I want to start at the root of the principle, the meaning, the core, the essence of the word Christ. Because how many people do you think actually know the real meaning of Christ? How many people do you actually understand who the embodiment of the Christ was in the previous day and age, who's created a profound breaking through point of establishment in what we knew to be the Piscean age? And still we are at the precipice of the beginning of the Aquarian age, and still so few people know about it. And that is truly the number shared. It's not an exact number, but in words, through beloved masters who are masters of illumined truth, the word is very few, still very, very few. I want to talk about the real meaning and how has been hijacked and distorted, and how many people think just by hearing the words the Christ or Christ consciousness or Master Jesus or the Son of God, Jesus, through the Bible and many other forms of scriptures and ideologies. And just because knowing that, we think, well, we know what this is about. We've read it somewhere. We're in a group, we're discussing it, and we think we know what it is. In actuality, you don't know what it is until you actually start applying the mystical approaches, the mystical intelligence of what the Christ is as a powerful, radiating, emanating field, right? So you don't get to embody that unless you fully know what pure compassion and benevolence of this life-giving essence is. How to walk in it, how to not just attain it, but how to maintain it. For many on the Christ path, it has been truly difficult to, once they had an epiphany of getting there, of establishing that and feeling what it is to actually maintain it. Because first of all, as I've already mentioned, the status quo is quite immense. The opposition in this realm, the opposing forces, that which works in the opposite manner as, the force of the Antichrist movement. It feels like it's so super oppressive that many who I talk to, who are actually really beautiful beings of light on this path, are having tremendous challenges. How to actually move through that, how to actually just be in that space and that essence, because so much is being done to be interfering with our physical bodies, because in a way our physical bodies are vessels, gateways for us to actually achieve that illumination through this Christ divine intelligence. And this is kind of the work I'm pursuing as a trajectory of light for quite a few years, but especially most intensely in the last year as I was walking through these breaking points of illumination through transgression or darkness. I call it transgression because darkness in itself does not describe this phenomena. Darkness just simply is, right? We all know the expression of light being what it is, darkness being its own expression. But transgression is when the opposing force of the Antichrist, that which controls and oppresses, goes against the nature of life. What this means is that as we expect the Christ to have its own divine will, in this bigger scheme of things, and then the dark path having its own will to manifest and create what it wants to. However, in this realm, as you know, this is not expressed this way, because the transgressions that the dark has been holding for so long often go against the very nature of Christ. So this is an intelligence that it's not easy to establish and maintain on this level of earth, being, this realm. And everyone who says, well, I've got it figured out and it's all beautiful and rainbow light body already and all these things, let me just course correct by starting up today's topic and taking it to someone that I've mentioned in the beginning of the video, who is our beloved master, teacher, and divine child, just as we all are, beloved Jesus the Christ. Many people don't understand the depth of his mission, and it wasn't until I actually started walking my own path, my own mission that was held within the Illumined Council, that I saw in actuality that this mission of illumined beings is a continuation of life, trying to break through more and more of that oppression, of transgression, of the dark. So as I was witnessing it through bits and pieces. It's always bits and pieces because, first of all, you have to know the illumined light does not operate in a way that even you as a being of illumination, you come of these realms, you don't just get information. That's what people think. People think, there's a high demand of expectancy. This oftentimes used terms are expectation and reality, right? When it hits, totally different things. So the expectation here and the demand of that presence and the way it is and how it operates in this realm currently is quite high because, again, of the hijacking of the main narratives that are being presented to us in this realm by, media, videos we watch, web pages, other people who will tell you things about that. And it's usually people who don't walk this path that have the most say in this matter, because those who actually walk the path do it humbly and in their own silence. Even in my videos, I don't get to talk about half of the things that I experience. Most of them are just contained and preserved within me. So you have to understand that the illumined light it always has a carrier. It has a carrier. It's not a carrier pigeon, though, in a way, because the pigeon can be represented as the dove, and the dove is of the Holy Spirit. And we have the symbology deeply ingrained in our consciousness, especially in spiritual and religious circles. But it is a carrier of this liquid light that in each cycle can be in a maximum level of capacity achieved for that breakthrough. When a specific cycle of creation is trying to reach its fulfillment and completion. So different avatar bodies would be chosen for that mission, right? So I'm not going to talk about my mission in this case. We're going to take it back to the understanding that's still incomplete for us when it comes to the matter of our beloved, oftentimes called the Messiah, Jesus the Christ. In that point in time, right, which is simply a timeline, but it's a concentric ring, this concentric circle that emanates light, because source in its absolute purity simply emanates light, and this is what these illumined avatars do through their bodies. However, it doesn't mean their lives are super easy, they're often very difficult and complicated, and most people don't understand these lives. So when people don't understand these lives, they try to gossip about it and create an ideology around it, which is exactly how our minds have been pre-programmed to function, and why we're so easily programmed by the establishment, the status quo, and especially those in not just religious circles, but also New Age communities, because there's a pre-imposed ideology. And what God told me very recently is that usually people who actually start this path of Illumined Ascension, they're kind of like empty blank vessels, like blank pieces of paper, because they cannot contain any ideology from before. Or when they start walking this path will be almost like a very rapid acceleration of getting that ideology dissolved, so you can actually wake up to the purity of what the illumined light wants to share with you in an intimate, innate communion with Source and Spirit of Life. So going again back to our beloved Master Jesus, we all know that there are so many narratives about this, not just as a being, but as a person as well. There's so much saying he's probably one of the most gossiped or talked about beings that ever lived on this planet. And we know that religion had a lot to do with it. You know, there isn't a day when I go outside and I walk, because there's now a church on every single, even tiny hill, every tiny village with even tiniest name. It has a statue, it has a wooden box with a figure of a beloved Messiah that we supposedly hold so dear in our hearts, and he's always hanging there on a cross. But what that message is actually saying, that I've repeated so many times before, is that these Antichrist forces have always been giving us, the light ones, a message saying, look, this is what this is what will happen to you if you will pursue this path. This is what will do you. So we have not understood these messages properly, first of all. Then we have not understood the life and the workings of this beautiful being properly as well, because in every level of every segment has been distorted. And in the third level, we don't understand still how to apply these teachings that were sacred. They're not ancient, they're eternal. And we don't know how to apply these to ourselves in our own lives. So for me, very personally, the most important thing is the establishment of the knowing that the Christ lives within me. And remember the words when our beloved Jesus said, all this that I do and more you shall also do at a specific point in time, which means that in every cycle of creation, evolution of life continues, and it continuously grows out of itself. It grows into more and becoming more, and there's an expansion to life. Just as there is an eternal presence, there is also an expansion to life. And this is how spirit is and functions and how it creates. The Antichrist creates through repetition and cloning and creating these stamps of, copy-paste. And so a lot of people who actually function through ideology and beliefs instead of their own inner communion with Source, they're also actually applying through the same principle. Stapler, right? Copy-paste. So I'm going to get to that point of cloning soon as well, because it's very important issue we also need to kind of put into as a tiny contribution. But let me tell you, how many times have we heard different narratives and stories about Jesus himself? He was this, he was that. There's this book, there's that gospel, there's this version, this movie. There's one version in which he actually lived and went to India or in Tibet or somewhere, and he left a footprint there, and they still have it, and they're saying this is Jesus, and he lived there and he taught the people. And there's so many stories and versions that we often don't think about the fact that there were many beings who probably held that same name, similar lifetimes, and yet there was only one being who was the avatar extension of the illumined mission purpose, who needed to liberate and bring forth the essence of what we call the Savior. I've explained in the videos previously, right, what the Savior truly means. I've talked about it on my Patreon content because people have misunderstood the words the Savior. Because what Jesus did as the Christ embodiment at that specific time, he opened up a field. He actually liberated the souls of humanity to not be taken back up and recycled into nothingness. And most people don't even know that because they do not know the Gnostic teachings. For example, the gospel that I recommended, written by Gabriel, this German scribe and messenger and teacher, who had her own experience with Jesus. And that's the point, that you have your own visitation, you have your own experience, and yet it's not an ET visitation. It's not a psychic experience. And this is my next point I'm trying to make here. So first of all, right, we have to understand, and this is what Jesus told us specifically in our own communion with him as a beautiful brother of illumined light. And he said, people still don't get the point. It was not about who I was or what name I carried, what was my real name. It was about what I taught. It was always about my teachings. As you know, these teachings were redistributed through many different versions that later became versions of these versions. And they, as you know, through forces of filtration, have become different things. And now we're at this point now when the goddess of liberation is coming through. And I know this to be my own spirit, Mother Aurea. And she's saying we need to liberate this now, these false ideologies that have been present with us for so long, because none of these has it all right. And it's not about who has it right, like which religion has it right, which is also hijacked and in a way with intention, very specific intention placed among humanity, so they would just end up quarreling among each other instead of pursuing the path of the truth and the righteous truth that he taught, as a being that embodied this essence, that it brought forth this field through his own light body integration and mastery, hence he could ascend. So he opened up a field for that to even become a possibility for humanity, which before it was not even a possibility because the immensity of the fall was that dire. Okay, so that's one thing. That's a super important message. Now I want to talk about the next thing, which is the New Age perspective. So when you encounter different New Age researchers and people with contact, and they usually talk about ETs, right? ET beings. And recently I came across this video and someone talked about all these contacts that they're having, these different visitations and beings, and they're always presenting themselves through these beams of light and they're seeing them as this and that. And I was contemplating on that for so long because I never had such an experience. And I was contemplating so long and so hard with such fervent, almost like deep desire for God to show me the real path here. What's the real truth? I don't want anything distorted. I really want to know what's the deal with these things. So the next day I'm sitting in meditation and I was still pondering on why these people see and why certain people don't, and what's the deal here? Are some people just not open? And how can some people just see all these things? Like it's almost like a light show, right? And I was contemplating, and again, the same words came through, which were, it is not about the visible manifestation of light. Remember again, illumined light is not a visible manifestation of light. Illumined light is so subtle. The codes of light through these illumined light bodies are so subtle, we really, with our physical eye spectrum, we can't detect them. So I'm sitting in that meditation and I'm feeling this sense of an inner eye opening, which I used to have before the transgression, was very open and active for me. And I was so delighted because it was reestablished in me to see with the inner eye the light intelligence. And I saw like a mini light being, you know, when you do these meditations, when you actually make yourself smaller and you put the inner light being that you are in your third eye, and then you bring it forth through your radiant light body. Well, those of you who actually pursue spiritual teachings of illumination, you understand what I'm talking about. And those of you who don't, pass this on because you're obviously not interested in that. So it doesn't matter, right? Different realms, different specifications. But I'm making my point here that I was seeing this like a being walking towards me, but it was just like a silhouette and was tiny. And it presented like this, almost like this being who can shape themselves, and they could reshape, and they could be a sphere and they're a diamond. And I could see this as this liquid plasmic manifestation of something here in my third eye. And then I heard the words, so you wouldn't feel left out, and like a laughter, like a being laughing. And the energy filled me, was so radiant and so beautiful and so divine. And then I thought about it again some more. And this is what came through, was actually we called upon beloved Master Jesus himself. And he said these following words. He said, it's very intriguing for people who witness this phenomena at such a huge extent, to never actually come across a critical thinking, right? A critical alignment with the fact that, you know how many technologies exist on this planet? You have to be aware of that. We have cloning. Cloning exists. The light side has it. The dark ones have it. We have Blue Beam Project. Have you heard of that, right? How they can manifest all these different ET light ships and things flying and different manifestations of Messiah showing up and addressing and speaking to people right through global networks and coming through what we now know as the 5G, and how they actually planned that and all of that. It was presented to us as one of the conspiracy theories, which are always presented as crazy, but there's many of these things that exist somehow because the collective consciousness level did not take things into that direction. They have not, or not yet, manifested themselves in this realm. But they have, you know, in psychic realm, they have. This is what people don't realize, is they think, well, it didn't happen in reality in physical time, so it doesn't exist, but it happens in the astral plane. And the astral plane, these like a lesser hijacked astral planes are a creation that is a creation of false light. It's actually a fallen light. It's a narrative presented to us to make us be deceived from what is the true light. And many people who think they see light phenomena are actually watching a movie. And it's a very hard thing to say. I'm not saying that there's people who've never had a real contact. I'm sure they have. But you have to understand one thing. Contact with a being, and any being, any ET, any other being that maybe it's not physical, holding this body that we do now, can have an appearance of light, can emanate light. However, you know, my teaching is that of the illumined light, prime light, true, original, immaculate light. That's my teaching. And that's always has been my message, my main message, to tune into that. And that's the difference. And there's so much light phenomena. And even Jesus himself said in a joke, he said, you know, just like you have cloning here on earth, don't you think that it exists in other spheres of reality? Like they have cloning as well? So, you know, I've heard so many narratives of beloved Jesus. He's actually from that planet. He's actually on a master mothership. He's with the Galactics. He's here. He's with QAnon. I've heard all versions. And you know what his response was in that beautiful light manifestation that we had in that meditation? He simply said, people have forgotten still. They're digging into who I was and where I come from, what's my origin. And my own belief is no one knows his origin. He does. His being does. It's not our job to dig into that. It's humanity's job to even get to the point of knowing how to demonstrate, how to embody the values of the truth that he shared. And so many are now passing on, and through our own manifest illumined light missions. And it saddens me in a way because people have been so deeply misled to actually not understand how easy it is. Just prayer to actually be aligned with the illumined light, just praying to be with the genuine Christ, which is the natural field through which all life has been first birthed. That's why it's called the first Son of God, or the divine. And it's not a one man or a one person, even not one light being. But it is that which birthed us that we can actually bring into manifest realm. And we ascend with that, through that, but also with that principle. And it's a principle, just like the Christ is, it's a field, but it's also a principle of truth, a principle of illumination. And that's what most people don't know. And they are focusing on these anecdotes and stories. And, you know, that's, let's say, people who read the Bible. And they get so fixed on what this story means and all these different interpretations. You know, the mind has so many variables. And all of these can interpret that in so many infinite amounts, units of form, right? Infinite amounts. And that's how the mind is. That's the mind intelligence, which is archonic. Is to create confusion, it's to create repetition, it's to create versions, like altered versions of itself, only to keep us to be like spinning around and never get to the core. And only at the core there is illumined truth. Only at the core you know the true Christ, and through your own Christ, knowing your Christ, you actually know the Christ of all, and you feel them and you're one with them. And you can have a moment when it feels like a light curtain is dropped over you, and you feel there's a connection between you and perhaps another being. There's an illumined being perhaps there guiding you, reaching their hand and saying, look, don't follow me, but touch me. I will do that transference of the liquid light if you only allow me. But most people are looking like this, bedazzled, puzzled all the time, and we still don't see. And I'm often like this. It's been over 2,000 years now, and still, right? Still kind of like a walk of shame, and it's still so much misunderstanding. And Jesus often in our meditations, he does like this. You know, like there's a feeling of him nodding his head and saying, and still there's hope. He says always, you still keep spreading the truth. Someone might hear it. Don't give up. That's all. You know, his teachings, when I was having my worst times, you know, I'm my own being, but still, his teachings helped me because he already walked the plane of earth, and I've never been here before in my own mission. It's been the first time, and it's sometimes hard. And his words and the way he presents things in such a simplistic manner have been life-saving. That's why he brought forth the essence of being the savior, not to save another, but to bring that forth. What does it truly mean? How can we be not rescued, but liberated? And my own spirit mother and the spirit of Aurea, she is that force of liberation which finally pulls that essence and brings the soul into their natural alignment and the ability to live as the pure essence of life. And that's what most people don't understand still. So as he's saying, I was not what most people think I am or what they thought of me to be. And even his teachings, as you know, were misinterpreted. Like, he was probably betrayed on so many levels, not just when he was alive, but also when, after his passing and ascension, you know, some who were not as what they portrayed themselves to be as his disciples, some turned over and were spreading false truths, just like we have it now, so much of that, and they were not. And so we came across another beautiful reading, which is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. She writes her own life story. She was eager to write it. And the presentation there is so beautiful. And there's one thing she said also there. She said, people did not get him because he was not as what we think now, right? For him to be. He was like pure loving grace. That's what the church presents, right? Like this idealism of something you can never reach. It's so far reaching, you can never attain that. Anyone can attain and channel divine grace. Anyone. But it has to be your lifelong desire. It has to be your only burning high desire to know the Christ, to be humble enough to accept the gift of Christ. Because I know a lot of thinkers who are more on the ego side of life, and they're speaking so much about themselves, and yet they're not humble enough to even accept that maybe they don't know everything yet. If you're not humble, it will not touch you. It will remain an elusive thing until you wake yourself up enough to realize that you're foolish and you're childish and you're ignorant and you don't want to see the truth. And then one day you do like this, the whole world opens up, and you might get to witness that and see, oh my goodness, look at this. I've been missing this my whole life. How could I be like this, so blind? We've all had these moments, those of us who had to walk this path. They were aspects of our human nature that woke up like this. They went screaming with this liberation. And that's the authentic one. It's not, you can't, you know, it's something you can't record. You know, there's a lot of people who are like this. But when you have your own epiphany, when you have a true Christ illumination moment, you can't record that. It's usually in your own intimate space. And you don't want to brag about it. It just is. It's so pure, beautiful, and simple. And it is so simple. And most people who brag about all that they are and what they can do and manifest, they have not yet gotten it. They don't understand yet what the Christ truly is. So in Magdalene's words, she said people often did not like him because all they wanted from him is for him to heal them. Heal me, do this, do this. But when he started teaching them the liberation from that, the independence, don't parasite, you know, one on the other. Don't be codependent, don't attach. Be yourself, be sovereign. He was very strict, like I am in my teachings. I'm very strict when it comes to these things. My nature is playful, but when I teach, I'm strict. Because downward to the point, you have to know what you're talking about. Otherwise, again, you're misleading someone. And sometimes people think to be in the essence of the Christ is to always be so beautifully, lovingly sounding and all of that. And when you don't get to tell someone the truth, sometimes the truth has to be, you know, spank you in a metaphorical way. But it has to have enough light quotient to liberate you, to give you a slap from what you thought was, and you're gripping on to that ego ideology and think that's the only way, and you're actually being rigid and stubborn and naive in truth, and not willing to really see the Christ as the beautiful essence of divine grace that it is. And so she said, Magdalene, people would then refuse him and his teachings. They didn't like him. They turn away from him. And I thought, well, I've lived like that my whole life. First, people get enthusiastic about what I am, my essence. They want to be with you. They want to know everything. And then you would say something and trigger something in them that they don't want to yet know about themselves or see or hear. Witness, people don't want to witness these aspects, but they need to be witnessed. I had to witness myself, and I was always so pure and loving, and yet there were aspects of me that were holding control. This was the Luciferian aspect that we all inherited. Do you know that just by holding these bodies, we actually take the burden of what is called the Luciferian Fall and rebellion? We all had this rebel inside, and most people still do, because they refuse to. They're stubborn. They don't want to wake up. They rather fixate themselves on these false notions and who's Jesus and what starship he's now on and how you can manifest seeing him. And I don't think he would just visually appear to people who don't, have the right intention, have nothing but purity in their hearts. He knows his disciples, just like those of us who walk this path in this time, in this age. We know the humble people that approach us and say, I want to walk with you. They don't say, I want to learn. I want you to be my guru. They simply say, I want to walk with you. I'm feeling the desire to be aligned with this path as well. And that's what it is. And when you're walking with, sometimes you're going to stumble upon a stone and the twig will take you. You're going to have a twig come into your foot and you're going to do, ouch. See, it's the same thing. Walk is not always pleasant. I've walked so many mountains. I'm not going to say 1,000, but a lot in my days, when I was younger and more agile and not transgressed yet. And let me tell you, there were aspects of climbing the mountain so beautiful, and there were aspects when I thought I'm going to die from this, from exhaustion, from, going the wrong route, thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die here at this wall. These were all such beautiful initiations for me, actually. And I've learned to be not as rigid, because we all have or had these rigid aspects. But I'm going to say have, because I'm not going to be pretending that we're still not walking this, because in this time we've gathered a lot of that rebellion, and we're kind of doing, some of us, these final pushes through that control. And once we're through it, we can actually ascend. There is no cheat sheet here. We can't cheat our way out of this. There's no escape. This is not an escape room, It is what it is. And it's a path set with so much beauty and grace, and yet, it has to be masterfully and skillfully walked, and it has to be earned. Not in a way that, God would send us here and we have to earn God's love. It's not like that. But the path has to be earned. The understanding, the trials of physical realms and the missions and all these things. So people who are usually bragging about all that they do and how, amazing they are, and they're just blah, blah, blah. I don't trust these people, because they rather speak about themselves than actually live their lives in humble service. And the service is not always being with people. Service is just serving spirit, what spirit wants from you at this time. And in this moment for me, service to life is staying alive and lifting up my body so I can finish my job, what I came here to do. Because doing a disservice would be for me to quit. And I could as easily have done that when I was actually half dead. And this will never show. There's no photo evidence of what I went through, because when you're actually living in complete, how to say this, abomination, what happened, and you're only half alive, you don't get to make selfies of yourself, right? We only see beautiful things once they come on the other side of the screen. And that's why people don't know the Christ, because only when you walk through the valley of the shadows of the death, coming on the other side, you will. And it takes a lot of courage, a lot of guts and stamina, and not getting too sidetracked with all these ideologies and ideas, especially about Jesus, because in my own solemn conviction, no one knows. And in truth, he's not located anywhere, because illumined beings, they can be anywhere in any time. There's simply this emanation of light that can fill the space, not just a room. I'm speaking about it from my own experience. And just today, I felt his presence. I don't see him like my mother. Sometimes she would see him. She has a very deep connection with him, because she's been embodied on this planet before, and I saw her once in this lifetime, really close, in that group, and he was teaching. And being one of those women who were kind of like, dealing with children, and there's a lot of these groups as well back then with the women that were never presented to reality that we know now. These narratives of what the women did back in the past were never shown to us. So it's like delete the existence of the feminine and distort the masculine, right? That was the narrative. And in any way, she has this beautiful connection, and she could see, like, sometimes it feels like a curtain of light. His white presence comes, and she could sometimes even feel like the shapes and figures of his face, whether he's smiling, whether he's nodding, or sometimes even doing like, when we're being naughty. And so anyway, I don't have that experience. Mine is different. I feel things. And just today I had this feeling, I had this surge because I was going through a profound miracle of light body work. And afterwards, I see this image, and it looks like he is watching me. And it was just like the eyes in the image. And he just used that, I felt like the framework, this screen, like to come through. And I started crying. I said, "Are you proud of me?" And he does, like, very, very much. Oh, I have goosebumps now talking about that, And no one will know but the one who walks this path. And even for me, I know that I may speak volumes, but my idea is not to make convictions out of this life. Even when I pass, I don't need to be remembered. I don't need to have books. I don't need to write material. This writes itself. Spirit told me. I write myself. Spirit writes itself. It's a narrative of life. And it's that beautiful. It's that freedom, that understanding that when you live that life, your purest, highest version of life that you can, demonstrate the highest morality, integrity, compassion, kindness to yourself, to all life, not just to others, but all life forms, animals, plants, the air, all of it, all elements. And then when you leave, you've done the absolute best, that you've put all your emanation that you could. You poured all your love into this, even at your worst, like they say, in sickness or health. That's what it is. That's what it is to be a Christ. So I hope I was able to present some of these things in as simple as manner I can. As you know, when I start talking, I can never stop. So I could go on and on. But I'm going to use the rest of the time to finish my walk. And I'm happy to be back in nature because there's no snow here and it's much warmer. So I'm liking that. I do miss the mountains though. I really do. But there's a view over the other side with the other range of mountains. However, there's no sun. So we rarely get to see them. So anyway, on my Patreon page, I do this work. We go much deeper, especially at the advanced level. I share profound, illumined light intelligence understanding. We go through these activations and how to do them to actually, work this through your body, because it's not something that just happens. When you're a devotee, when you're in the discipleship, that's what you do. So it depends whether you're called to that or where you're not. It really depends. So that's that. And also want to announce that now I'm finally open to do sessions again, and I don't have only video sessions available on Skype, because now, as you know, I have Wi-Fi again. I do have audio calls. These are shorter ones, but they're also pretty profound and intense, what I will channel spirit and just channel this grace of the mother and the experience that the soul is going through, moving through, and helping with the challenges and possible transgressions. And I do these via Telegram. Don't forget, I just recently created a Telegram working page as well. It's called Essential Pioneers, and I will be sharing more messages there. So if you don't have Telegram yet, please get it, because it's such an amazing app. Because it's so good and so many millions of users are constantly joining, because it has good protection of your private data, which other apps that belong to the major corporation globalists don't. So it's amazing. And if you want to join, you can at any time, in case this channel ever drops. You never know. There's a backup there, so I would encourage you to join. It's an amazing app to use, actually. I heard you can also use it on desktop and has many different versions, so it's amazing. And I really enjoyed this app. I mean, it's my favorite. And there's a lot of channels there that you can follow that share a lot about different things happening on the planet. So you can also be linked in. And it's all free speech, right? It's not censored. So anyway, if you want to join, there's a link there. down below. Telegram me, Ascension Pioneers. So if you ever want to assist the journey, if you feel these messages have stirred up something deep inside you and have, I don't know, just made an impact in your life, you still feel you don't have a calling to join the working group, you don't want to be part of Illumined Ascension, that's fine. You know, it is what it is. It's not for everyone. I clearly know that. And I've been shown that years ago. But if you feel at least these general messages have some impact on you, you can always visit my donation page. It's just a link, right? Pay me link. There's a link down below as well. Thank you those who already have supported my work in any way, means and matter. And as always, I'm sending you tremendous blessings for your path. Whatever, you know, roadblocks you may be encountering, know that there's a tremendous miracle at work when we actually know the Christ. And I will talk about these miracles through these activations we do on Patreon. And yeah, that's that. I'll see you. And if you're ever called to do personal work with me, just visit my personal services page, especially for the audio. These are new, and I'm actually really loving that format and idea because it's great. So anyway, with so much love, wisdom, and power, as always, take care wherever you are. Watch out for yourself, and I'll see you next time.